to our first story now, and it's one that was actually suggested by a viewer, Busami M. Salem, who goes by the Twitter handle @SamiSong, and it's about the Kuwaiti Bidun. The word Bidun means without, as in without papers, and it refers to the stateless people in Arab countries who have almost no rights nor privileges. In Kuwait, the Bidun are intensifying a campaign that is demanding full rights as citizens of the country. They've not only been protesting on the streets, but are now actively increasing their presence online. If you take a look at my screen, you'll see a number of people. This is a montage of people protesting for the rights of the Bidun. And I want to draw your attention to a specific image that is quite intriguing. This here is an image that really exemplifies what's going on in this case, because activists ask people on Facebook to flip their avatars or their picture as a gesture of solidarity with the Bidun. The picture you see here is of Ahmed Al-Khulaifi, who came up with the idea by starting the hashtag Iqlib, meaning flip in Arabic. Now there's another image that I think is also worth considering. This one is a visual of a recent protest in Kuwait. Inspired by the Arab awakening, Bidun protesters actually came out to demand equal rights, only to be pushed back by security forces. Now the Bidun in Kuwait number around 80,000 to 120,000, which is about roughly 10% of the Kuwaiti population. We also have another image that I think is worth taking a look at. It shows you how the people in Kuwait, how the Bidun in particular, feel about this issue and the strength of those feelings. It's a picture from an earlier protest where the Bidun compared the Kuwaiti government committee that's been tasked with handling their affairs to Nazis. The Bidun cannot legally obtain birth, death, marriage, nor divorce certificates. The same applies to driving licenses, identification cards, and passports. So we're lucky to have joining us now via Skype a Kuwaiti journalist and blogger, Mona Kareem, who contributes to Global Voices and Jadaliya.com. She's written extensively on the condition of the Bidun in Kuwait. Mona, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the stream. I've got to ask you, we understand that a lot of Kuwaitis were given citizenship, about a third of the population in 1959, another third were given partial rights, and another third were excluded. Why were the Bidun not granted citizenship in the 1950s?
Well, thank you for hosting me at first. Another thing, just to answer your question, the issue of Bidun, some people go like, it goes back until 1920, and some go like it started after the independence of the country, because most of them actually are Bedouins, so they do not have enough documents. Some do have documents, but still the case is very complicated when it comes to the legal side of it. It's not about 1959, there is no specific date, this has been going for a long time, and the government tried to do it every year and so, but depending on the political life and the tension, you know, things sometimes slip around. So some get the citizenship, some didn't. So that's why the cause is, you know, is going off and on, and that's why there are campaigns trying to highlight it.
But Mona, let me ask you a question. If part of the issue is that there's a legal concern because they don't have adequate paperwork to get their citizenship, but because they're not citizens, they're not allowed to get common paperwork like a driver's license or a passport,
yes,
isn't that simply relegating them to a permanent underclass status?
Yes, it's actually, when you meet the people, the Bedouin people, you would see that they are, you know, struggling in everyday life. Starting from 1986, they started to lose their rights gradually. Before that, they were almost like the Kuwaiti citizens, having all privileges except for the citizenship and some other minor ones. But 1986, up until now, they have been losing it. And now we're just going back and saying, okay, how about we go back prior to 1986, when people had the access to education and medication and all the documents that everyone is entitled to have naturally. Mm-hmm. So the thing with it is, all human rights organizations, the people themselves, go like, okay, how about first step that we actually get documents so we can move, so we can get a job, you know, so we can get education, higher one especially. And that's why it's a very intense cause that needs to be solved. And some people are actually hopeful, especially that in the past years, for example, the Kuwaiti women got the rights to vote and run for elections, so people thought, okay, maybe we thought it's a losing cause, but it's not. You know, the women were able to do it, the youth were able to change things in the political life, and maybe we can do the same.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. I just want to, you know, I've spent a lot of time in Kuwait, my family's in Kuwait, and a lot of people feel like Kuwait has been regressing socially and politically. And we saw that, you know, people came out and protested in February, the Biduns for their rights. But what was the cause? And maybe that will tell us where we're headed. Because wasn't it when, you know, Ben Ali was ousted, the Kuwaiti government and many Arab governments gave the concessions to their people in the form of $3,000 to each citizen and food stamps. And that, you know, really enraged the Bidun. Is that not a cause for the protests? And what do you anticipate is going to happen moving forward? Seems we're
having a small issue with her, and we're going to come back to it. But just to clarify what you're saying,
right.
So when Ben Ali was ousted in Tunisia,
right.
You're saying that a lot of these Gulf states decided they wanted to do something to calm their
right.
people, and in this case, the Bidun
right.
were left out of that. What are your thoughts, Sarah?
No, I mean, it's a reactive. You know, my question to Mona also is, why now? You know, this has been going on for 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
What, you know, was it what the Tunisians that kind of sparked this thought? So yeah, you know, kind of echoing what you were saying. But my main question is, why now and where are we headed?
I feel like it was exacerbated by the fact that, you know, all of a sudden a very privileged group of people, Kuwaiti citizens are very privileged, you know, their GDP is extremely high, higher than the United States. They all of a sudden are being given food rations. Yeah, and, you know, free money, and, you know, for whatever reasons, they said it was to commemorate the anniversary of the Gulf War, the first Gulf War. So perhaps that's why, because you have all of a sudden stateless people in the numbers of 100,000.
Well, you know, you bring up a really interesting point, because one of the issues that has been raised by Bidun protesters is that they actually fought in the Gulf War. Many Bidun participated in the resistance after Saddam Hussein's invasion, and they feel like, you know, in some countries, you actually, even in the United States, there are opportunities for people who fight for the country to gain more fast-track citizenship, whereas it seems like they fought for their country, and then they're still stuck in this stateless
What's
situation.
also interesting is that they also support, they're like the legs of the country in many ways. They do a lot of the menial labor, the work that the Kuwaitis potentially may not be doing.
Right, which is perhaps all the more reason not to give them the rights if they're doing the work, you know, anyway, I'm not saying that, but perhaps that's the government's perspective, because it's a decade.
But you could also flip that and say, why not? Because they are doing the work.
Yeah, well, let's bring it back to Mona. Mona, I'm glad that we have you back. We're curious, I just want to actually get into the role that social media has played in this. How has social media empowered the Bidun to raise their concerns?
Okay, if we just have a look at what is the relationship between internet and the Kuwaiti society. The Kuwait was, back in the 90s, the second Arab country to have internet connection. At the beginning, the percentage of people who speak English was less than now, and the percentage of Arabic websites was also less. So what happened basically is that people thought internet is just a tool for entertainment. By the time this has evolved, and in 2000, you know, the government, even the private companies started to be more independent on online technology. And in 2005, the bloggers of Kuwait did something, I would say a turning point, when they campaigned to have 5 electoral districts through their blogs, and then they took it to the street. And it happened. It went from 25 districts to 5 districts. And that just highlighted, attracted people to the internet. They thought, okay, maybe it's not only entertainment. I would say that the Bidun of Kuwait, they are financially less capable of, you know, having the latest technology and all of that. And actually, they're even less capable of financially, I would say, than even the expats of Kuwait.
So are you saying in that case, Mona, that it's been Kuwaiti citizens and expats who have been advancing this online, as opposed to the Bidun themselves?
No, actually, that's what I was going to explain. Just because of the Arab Spring and the image associated with the Arab Spring, that, you know, it has to do with the social media, the Bidun thought, okay, how about we just use it, you know. 3 years ago, when people were starting to go into Facebook in Kuwait, it was kind of like, I would say it was like a high school / university reunion. And this might sound funny, but some people thought it's an online dating website. So just months ago, the people thought, okay, we are Bidun, we're going to go online through Twitter and Facebook, and we're going to campaign for it. So they did, and that's when, just 5 days ago, when that campaign happened about flipping the avatar.
I want to ask you one other question, because one of the elements that we had found during our research was this poster from one of the protests that basically says that people's animals have more documentation. It's got an image of a cat who has some kind of official papers, which real human beings, Bidoun, cannot get. I'm just curious, does the Kuwaiti media report on this, and is there any kind of bias in the media against the Bidoun?
Unfortunately, that what this sign said is very truthful. People don't have documents of marriage or birth, death, divorce, a lot of things they lack. That's why that was highlighted in the protest. When it comes to the mainstream media, and that's why the Bidoun are going for social media, is that mainstream media is more into, getting the reactions of parliament members, of politicians, or of the government representatives. They do not like to focus on the Bidoun, except for the columnists, of course. I think in Kuwait, comparatively speaking, we have more freedom to talk and write and so on. So there is space for that. But does the mainstream media in general focus and support the Bidoun cause? I would say not necessarily. The people of Kuwait, some actually support it and some actually have been misinformed, so they think it might hurt the demographics of Kuwait.
But Mona, I want to thank you for joining us and giving us some more insight into this particular story. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, I think this is really intriguing story. I mean, what's your take on the overall situation?
I mean, I'm sitting here just thinking how it would be great to see other stateless populations come up too. I really admire them. I think it's great that they're stepping up and turning to social media, and it's such a creative idea, flipping your avatar. I've never seen that done before. I don't know if historically that has been done. So if you just look at other populations, the Sahrawis, the Kurds, there are lots of stateless populations out there. So,
well, hopefully this will raise more attention and people will be paying more attention to it. You can follow this story and learn more about it, as well as check out videos and links on our website, stream.aljazeera.com. We've got a lot of different information, including about this particular story on the Bidoun.